She bled for him, built him, made him untouchable. And when the court gathered to watch her fall, he didn't even have the spine to meet her eyes. That's the thing about power, isn't it? The people who help you climb are the first ones you throw off the edge. I'm about to tell you a story that'll rip your chest open and leave you gasping, because this isn't some fairy tale where the broken girl gets saved. This is about what happens when she stops waiting for salvation and becomes the storm herself. Stick with me till the end, smash that like, and drop your city in the comments so I know my tribe is listening. You're going to need something to hold on to. The great hall stank of wet stone and old blood. Soraya Virel stood in the center of it all, rain-soaked and trembling, but not from cold. The kind of trembling that starts in your bones when your body knows what your mind refuses to accept, that you're about to lose everything. The court pressed in from all sides, faces she'd fought beside, bled beside, faces that now looked at her like she was already dead. Kael Draven stood on the raised dais, and he wouldn't look at her, her alpha. The man she'd carved a path for through every enemy, every rival, every threat that came for his throat. She'd been the blade in the dark when he needed one, the shield when arrows flew, the mind that plotted 3 moves ahead while he played king. And now he stood there in his ceremonial leathers, jaw set, eyes fixed on some point above her head like she was beneath notice, like she was nothing. The silence stretched. Someone coughed. The sound echoed off vaulted ceilings that had witnessed 1,000 judgments, and Soraya realized with brutal clarity that this was hers. You don't survive what I survived by being stupid, she thought. You survive by reading the room. And this room wants blood. A woman stepped forward from Kael's left side. Tall, elegant, throat wrapped in silver that caught the torchlight just right. Mirella Shen. New, recent, the kind of beautiful that didn't need to try, which made it all the more dangerous. Mirella's hand rested on Kael's forearm, possessive, casual. The gesture of someone who'd already won. Oh, Soraya thought distantly, that's how it is. Soraya Virel. Kael's voice rang out, formal and cold, still wouldn't meet her eyes. You stand accused of undermining this pack's unity, of sowing discord, of placing personal ambition above collective strength. The words were stones. Each one landed. She didn't flinch. Undermining unity. That's what they called it when you questioned why resources went to Kael's inner circle while border families starved. Discord. That's what happened when you pointed out that half the council seats were filled by people who'd bought their way in. Personal ambition. Because wanting accountability was the same as treason. Soraya's throat worked. She could argue. She had evidence, records, testimony from people who'd seen what she'd seen. But she looked at their faces and understood. They knew. They all knew. And they didn't care. Because Kael had made his choice. And in a world built on hierarchies of dominance and submission, the Alpha's word was law, even when that law was a lie. Especially then. You were everything I built you to be, she said quietly. Her voice didn't shake. That was something. I made you untouchable. Kael's jaw tightened. For half a second, something flickered in his expression. Regret, maybe. Or just irritation that she was making this harder than it needed to be. And for that, you have my gratitude. His tone was flat, practiced. But gratitude doesn't buy loyalty when loyalty becomes a liability. There it was, the truth underneath the accusations. She'd become inconvenient, asked too many questions, pushed back too hard, and the woman at his side had offered something Soraya never could. Compliance. You're cast out, Kael said, severed from this pack. Your oaths are void. Your name is struck from our records. Leave before dawn, or what happens next won't be exile. The crowd shifted. Anticipation. Hunger. They wanted her to break, to beg, to rage. Soraya felt something crack open inside her chest. Not her heart. That had stopped working the moment she'd walked into this hall and seen Marilla's hand on Kael's arm. No. What cracked open was older, deeper. The part of her that had spent years bending, accommodating, making herself smaller so he could be bigger. She met Kael's eyes, held them, and smiled. Not kindness, not warmth. The kind of smile that says, you have no idea what you just did. Understood, she said. Then she turned and walked. Not fast, not slow, like she had all the time in the world. Behind her, the silence was deafening. But the rain had picked up by the time Soraya cleared the outer gates. No one followed. No one called her back. She hadn't expected them to. The city sprawled below the fortress, all crooked rooftops and smoking chimneys, and beyond that the forest, dark, endless, the kind of dark that swallowed people whole. Soraya pulled her cloak tighter and kept walking. Her boots squelched in mud. Water ran down her neck, cold and vicious, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling, and if she let herself feel right now, she'd collapse in the street and never get up. There's a philosophy they don't teach you when you're young and stupid and in love with someone who sees you as a tool. It goes like this. The moment you stop being useful, you stop being seen. And once you're invisible, you're already gone. She should have known, should have seen it coming. But you don't, do you? You tell yourself it's different, that your bond is special, that everything you've bled for means something, right up until it doesn't. The old market district was nearly empty, a few stragglers huddled under awnings, watching her pass with the kind of disinterest that came from seeing too much misery to care about one more soaked exile stumbling through the rain. Soraya's hands were numb. Her fingers had gone white-blue at the tips, and somewhere in the back of her mind a voice whispered that she should find shelter, get warm, survive the night. But survival felt like a joke. What exactly was she surviving for? The question sat heavy in her chest as she passed beneath an ancient archway at the city's edge. Old stonework, crumbling, covered in moss and carved with symbols no one remembered the meaning of anymore. She stopped. Just stopped. Rain poured. Thunder rolled somewhere distant, and Soraya Virel, who had bled and fought and sacrificed everything for a man who couldn't even look her in the eye, stood beneath that archway and felt the full weight of her insignificance. You look like you're deciding whether the world's worth staying in. The voice came from behind her, male, deep, unfamiliar. Soraya didn't turn, didn't care. That your business? No. A pause. But I've seen that look before. Usually ends one of two ways. And which way are you betting on? Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. He moved into her peripheral vision but didn't crowd her. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dark hair plastered to his skull from the rain. His face was all hard angles and old scars, the kind you got from fights that should have killed you. He looked at her like he was reading a book written in a language only he understood. I'm betting, he said quietly, that you're the kind of stubborn that chooses option 3. There is no option 3. There's always an option 3. He tilted his head. It's just usually the one nobody's stupid enough to take. Despite everything, Soraya felt her mouth twitch. Not quite a smile, but close. You got a name, philosopher? Do you? Fair. She turned to face him fully, really look at him, and something in the air shifted. It wasn't attraction, wasn't chemistry. It was recognition, the kind that bypasses your brain and goes straight to your gut. Ancient, primal. The feeling you get when you're standing across from something that could destroy you, and instead of running, you lean in. His eyes were gray, storm gray, and they didn't waver. Soraya, she heard herself say. Varion. The rain kept falling. The world kept turning. And Soraya made the kind of decision you make when you've got nothing left to lose and everything left to prove. I need a ride out of here, she said. Somewhere far. Somewhere they won't follow. Varion studied her. Running? Surviving. Same thing. Not even close. He considered that, then nodded once, sharp and final. I've got a camp 3 miles north. We leave at first light. Why? Why what? Why help me? Varion's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those gray eyes. Amusement, maybe, or respect. Because, he said, you didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't ask me to save you. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him despite the rain. You asked for a ride, like you were negotiating terms. I am. Good. He offered his hand. Then let's negotiate. Soraya looked at that hand, scarred knuckles, calluses that spoke of swords and survival. In the world she came from, accepting help from a stranger was weakness, dependency, the first step toward losing yourself. But she wasn't in that world anymore. Kael had made sure of that. She took his hand. His grip was firm, steady, the kind of steady that didn't bend. 3 miles north, Varian repeated. Don't get lost. Then he was gone, moving through the rain like a shadow, and Soraya was alone again beneath the archway with her heart pounding and her mind spinning. What the hell did I just do? But she knew. She'd chosen option 3. The camp was more than Soraya expected. Not a camp, really. A compound. Stone buildings arranged in a loose circle, torches burning despite the rain, and guards posted at intervals that suggested organization. Discipline. Power. Varian led her through the main gate without a word. The guards didn't question him, didn't even look surprised. They just stepped aside like his presence was explanation enough. Inside, the place was warm, dry, smelled like wood smoke and leather and something else. Something she couldn't name but felt in her chest. Authority. You run this? Soraya asked. Varian glanced back. What gave it away? The part where everyone's terrified of you. They're not terrified. He pushed open a heavy wooden door. They're respectful. Different thing. Is it? He smiled, barely. No. The room beyond was sparse. A table, chairs, maps spread across every surface. This wasn't a camp. This was a war room. Soraya's instincts screamed. You walked into something. Varian poured 2 cups of something dark and steaming from a pot near the fire, handed her one. Drink. You look half dead. She took it. The heat burned her palms, but she didn't let go. Who are you? I told you, Varian. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight. He leaned against the table, arms crossed. Now, your turn. What happened? Soraya's grip tightened on the cup. I was exiled. For? Asking questions. What kind of questions? The kind that get you thrown out when the answers are inconvenient. Varian nodded slowly, like that made perfect sense. Your alpha? Former alpha. You know what he lost? The question hit harder than it should have. Soraya looked down at her cup. Steam curled. She could see her reflection, distorted and broken. No, she said quietly. He doesn't. Then he's a fool. Or smart. Depends on how you look at it. How do you look at it? She met his eyes. Like I got played. Varian's expression didn't change, but something in the air between them shifted, sharpened. Here's the thing about getting played, he said. It only works once. After that, you're the one holding the deck. Pretty words? True ones. He pushed it off the table, moved closer, not threatening, just present. You came here because you needed a way out. Fine, I'll give you that. But let's be clear about something. What? You're not running. You're regrouping. His voice dropped. And when you're ready, you're going back. Not for him, for you. Soraya's breath caught. How does he know? I don't. Yes, you do. Varian's gaze was steady, unrelenting. I've seen it. That look. The one that says you're not done, you're just getting started. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but the words wouldn't come, because he wasn't. Somewhere between the exile and the rain and the archway, something had shifted in her. The grief was still there, the betrayal, the rage, but underneath it all was something colder, sharper, the realization that Kael hadn't just cast her out. He'd set her free. Stay the night, Varian said. We'll talk terms in the morning. Terms? You want protection. I want information. Seems like a fair trade. Soraya's eyes narrowed. What kind of information? The kind you've got about your former pack's weaknesses. He smiled. Not cruel, just honest. I'm not a charity, Soraya. I help people who can help me back. Fair, brutal, but fair. She nodded. Deal. Varian gestured toward a door at the back of the room. There's a bed through there. Lock if you want. No one will bother you. And if I don't trust you? Smart. He turned back to his maps. But trust isn't the issue. Leverage is, and right now you've got more to gain from me than I do from you, so sleep. We'll balance the scales tomorrow. Soraya stood there for a long moment watching him. This man who'd appeared out of nowhere, who'd offered help without asking for her story first, who looked at her like she was a problem to solve instead of a victim to save. She hated how much she respected that. Varion? He glanced up. Why'd you really help me? For the first time, his expression softened, just a fraction. Because, he said, I know what it's like to be thrown away by people who should have known better, and I know what comes after. His eyes held hers. The choice, stay down or get up swinging. Which did you pick? His smile was sharp, dangerous. What do you think, Mushachi? Soraya didn't sleep. She lay in the small room Varion had given her, staring at the ceiling, mind racing. Everything was wrong. She should be grieving, should be shattered. Instead, she felt awake, like she'd been sleepwalking for years and someone had finally slapped her hard enough to open her eyes. Kale's face kept surfacing, the way he'd looked at her, or hadn't, the way Marilla's hand had rested on his arm, possessive, claimed. Soraya's hands curled into fists. She'd given him everything, her loyalty, her blood, her future, and he'd traded it for someone prettier, someone easier. The rage that swept through her was clean, pure, not the messy kind that makes you stupid, the kind that makes you focused. She sat up, swung her legs over the side of the bed. Outside, the rain had stopped. Moonlight filtered through the narrow window, pale and cold. Soraya stood, crossed to the window, looked out at the compound below. Guards moved in shifts, organized, efficient. This wasn't some ragtag group of exiles. This was an operation. And Varion ran it. Who the hell is he? The question gnawed at her. She'd met plenty of powerful men. Kale had introduced her to half the Northern Territory's leadership, alphas, commanders, lords. But Varion didn't move like them. He moved like someone who didn't need to prove anything because the proof was self-evident. That kind of confidence didn't come from ambition. It came from certainty. A knock at the door made her turn. It's open, she called. Varion stepped inside. He'd changed. Dry clothes, hair still damp but no longer dripping. He carried a bundle under one arm. Couldn't sleep? He asked. Not my strong suit. He tossed the bundle onto the bed. Figured. Brought you something practical. Soraya unfolded it. Traveling clothes, sturdy, well-made, and a blade, short, balanced, the kind you kept close. She looked up. Why? Because tomorrow we ride, and you're not doing it in a soaked dress that'll get you killed before we clear the forest. Where are we going? South. That's not an answer. Varion leaned against the doorframe. You want the truth or the version that lets you sleep tonight? Truth. We're going to my home, and when we get there, you're going to meet some people. After that, you'll have a choice. What kind of choice? His expression was unreadable. The kind that changes everything. Soraya's pulse kicked up. You're being cryptic. I'm being careful. He straightened. Look, I don't know you. You don't know me. But we both know how this works. Trust is earned. So here's the first piece. He met her eyes. I'm not just some wanderer who happened to find you under an arch. I was there looking for someone. Her stomach dropped. Me? No, but when I saw you, I recognized something. What? Varion hesitated. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Then he said, potential. The word hung between them. Potential for what? Soraya asked. To be more than what they tried to make you. Her throat tightened. You don't know what they tried to make me. Don't I? His voice was quiet, dangerous. They tried to make you small, compliant, grateful for scraps. And when you refused, when you pushed back, they called it ambition, disloyalty, treason. He stepped closer. But you and I both know the truth. The only thing you're guilty of is wanting more than they were willing to give. Soraya's breath hitched. How does he know? Who are you? She whispered. Varion smiled, slow, deliberate. Someone who's going to offer you a deal you can't refuse. Try me. Marry me. The world stopped. Soraya stared at him. What? You heard me. You're insane. Maybe. He didn't look insane. He looked calm, certain. But hear me out. You need protection. status, a way back into the game. I need, he paused, something you can provide, which is legitimacy. Soraya's mind raced. You're not legitimate? I'm legitimate enough, but there are questions, challenges, people who'd like to see me fall. His eyes held hers. A bond, a public one, with someone who has nothing to lose and everything to gain. That changes the board. This is insane. This is strategy. This is a prison sentence. Only if you see it that way. Varion's voice dropped. I'm offering you power, Soraya, real power, not the kind you beg for, the kind you take, the kind that makes people kneel. Her heart hammered. And what do you get? An ally, a partner, someone who understands that power isn't about dominance. It's about control. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. You think I don't see it? The way you're calculating right now, weighing options, looking for the angle. There's always an angle. Exactly. He smiled. So here's mine. Marry me. Come south, and I'll give you everything you need to make them regret ever letting you go. Soraya's pulse roared in her ears. This was insane, reckless, stupid, but God, it felt right. One condition, she heard herself say. Name it. This is business, not personal. We're clear on that? Varion's expression didn't flicker. Crystal. And if I change my mind? Then you walk. No chains, no obligations. His voice was steady, final. But I don't think you will. Why? Because you're not the kind of person who walks away from a fight. His eyes burned into hers. You're the kind who wins. Soraya's breath caught. He's right. Damn him, he's right. She extended her hand. Deal. Varian took it, and the moment their palms touched, the air around them shifted, thickened. Soraya gasped. Power, raw, ancient, crushing. It poured off him in waves, and for the first time she understood. This wasn't just a man. This was something else. What? She started. Later, Varian said. His grip tightened. Do you accept? The bond was already forming. She could feel it. Threads of energy weaving between them, binding, locking into place. Point of no return. Yes, she whispered. The world exploded into light. When Soraya woke, the sun was up. She was alone. And on her left hand, where there had been nothing before, was a mark. Black. Intricate. Burning. The bond mark. She stared at it. What did I just do? The door opened. Varian stepped in, fully dressed, armored. Ready. We ride in 10, he said. Where? Home. He paused. Looked at her. Really looked at her. My home. The capital. Soraya's stomach dropped. Capital of what? Varian's smile was sharp, deadly. The Empire. And then he was gone, leaving Soraya sitting on the bed, heart pounding, staring at the mark on her hand. The bond mark of a king. She'd just married a king, and she had no idea which one. The Empire. The words echoed in Soraya's skull as she stood frozen in that small room, staring at the mark burned into her flesh. Black lines twisted across her skin like living things, pulsing with a heat that had nothing to do with fever and everything to do with the bond she'd just sealed. A king. She'd married a king. Her hands shook. Not fear, not exactly. Something worse. The realization that she'd made a choice in the dark, and now the sun was up and she had to live with it. The door was still open. She could hear movement outside. Voices. Orders being given in clipped, efficient tones. The compound was waking up, and she was standing here in borrowed clothes with a bond mark she didn't understand and a husband she'd known for less than a night. Move, her mind screamed. Do something. But her body wouldn't cooperate, because the truth was settling in her chest like a stone. This wasn't a rescue. This was a transaction, and she'd signed her name in blood without reading the terms. Footsteps approached. Heavy, purposeful. Varian appeared in the doorway again. This time he wasn't alone. A woman stood behind him, older, gray-streaked hair pulled back severe, eyes like chips of ice. The woman looked Soraya up and down with the kind of assessment that strips you to the bone and finds you wanting. Wonderful. Valerion gestured. This is Corinne. She'll help you prepare. Prepare for what? Soraya wanted to ask, but her throat had gone dry. Corinne stepped forward. Her gaze dropped to the mark on Soraya's hand, and something flickered in her expression. Not surprise. Recognition. So it's true, Corinne said. Her voice was gravel and smoke. He actually went through with it. Problem? Varion's tone was mild, but there was an edge underneath. Depends. Corinne's eyes cut back to Soraya. Does she know? She knows enough. Enough to survive the capital? We'll see. The casual way they discussed her survival made Soraya's spine stiffen. She found her voice. I'm right here. Corinne's mouth twitched, almost a smile. So you are. She turned to Varion. Give us an hour. He nodded once and left without another word. The door closed. Silence pressed in. Corinne moved to the window, looked out at the compound below. You have questions? A few thousand. Start with the important ones. We don't have time for the rest. Soraya's mind raced. Where to even begin? Who is he? What empire? What did I just bind myself to? But those weren't the right questions. The right question was the one burning in her gut. Am I going to die? Corinne turned, really looked at her, and for the first time something like respect crossed her face. Maybe. She crossed her arms. The capital's not kind to outsiders, especially not ones who show up wearing the king's mark without warning. You'll have enemies before you clear the gates. Why? Because power makes people desperate, and desperate people kill. Corinne's gaze was steady. But if you're smart, if you listen, if you learn fast, you might survive long enough to matter. Might, great. Soraya looked down at her hands. The mark pulsed. What is this? The bond. What did it do? Linked you. Corinne's tone was matter of fact. Body, mind, essence, it's old magic. The kind that doesn't break. The kind that binds for life. Can it be undone? Why? You regretting it already? Yes. No. Maybe. Soraya didn't know. I'm trying to understand what I just agreed to. Corinne's expression softened, barely. You agreed to become a queen. The word hit like a punch. Queen. Not a partner, not an ally. A queen. I don't... Soraya started. You don't have a choice anymore. Corinne interrupted. The bond's sealed. The mark's visible. By nightfall, every power player in the Empire will know Varion Thorn took a bride, and they'll come for you. Why? Because you're a weakness they can exploit. Corinne stepped closer. Or a weapon they can use, depends on how you play it. The philosophy underneath that statement was brutal. In a world built on dominance hierarchies, the person standing next to the king wasn't decoration. They were leverage, a vulnerability to probe, a pressure point to exploit. And Soraya had just painted a target on her own back. What do I do? The question came out quieter than she intended. Corinne's smile was sharp. You learn, fast, and you never ever let them see you bleed. An hour later, Soraya looked like someone else. Corinne had dressed her in traveling leathers, dark, functional, armor disguised as clothing. Her hair was braided tight against her skull, practical and severe. A blade hung at her hip, another at her thigh. She looked dangerous. She felt terrified. Better, Corinne said, circling her. You won't pass for nobility, but you won't scream fresh meat either. Comforting. It's realistic. Corinne handed her a cloak. Heavy, lined with something that shimmered when it moved. Wear this. It's warded. Won't stop a blade, but it'll slow most curses. Curses? Magic's legal in the capital. Encouraged even. You'll see worse than curses before the week's out. Corinne's gaze was steady. Stay close to Varion. Don't wander. Don't trust anyone who smiles too much. And for the love of survival, don't let anyone bait you into a public confrontation. Soraya absorbed that. Anything else? Yes. Corinne's voice dropped. When you meet the court, when they test you, and they will test you, remember this. They're looking for weakness, fear, hesitation. Show them any of that, and you're done. What should I show them? Corinne's smile was cold. Nothing. Show them nothing. Be a locked door they can't read. The advice settled in Soraya's chest. She'd spent years learning how to read people, how to anticipate, manipulate, navigate power structures. But this was different. This wasn't navigating. This was war. Ready? Varion's voice came from the doorway. Soraya turned. He stood there in full regalia now, black armor chased with silver, a cloak that moved like smoke, and at his hip, a sword that looked like it had tasted more blood than water. He looked every inch a king, and she looked like someone pretending. No, she said honestly. His mouth curved. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. I'm not afraid. Liar. Their eyes locked, and Soraya realized something. He wasn't mocking her. He was testing her, seeing if she'd fold under pressure. She lifted her chin. Let's go. Varion's smile widened, just a fraction. After you. Odd. The ride south was brutal. They moved fast, too fast for comfort. The horses were war-bred, built for endurance and speed, and Varion set a pace that made conversation impossible, which was fine. Soraya didn't have words for what was churning in her chest. The forest blurred past, dark trees, mist curling between trunks. The air smelled like rain and rot, and something older, wilder. Behind her, Varion's guards rode in formation, silent, disciplined. She'd counted 12, all armed, all watching her like she might bolt. Maybe she should. But where would she go? Back to Kael? Beg for scraps? No. That version of her was dead. The woman riding south toward an empire she didn't understand was someone new, someone harder, someone who'd made a deal with a king and had to see it through. They stopped once. Midday. A clearing with a stream. Soraya dismounted, legs screaming. She wasn't used to riding this hard. Every muscle protested. Varion appeared beside her, handed her a water skin. Drink. She drank. The water was cold, clean. It helped. How much farther? She asked. We'll reach the outer territories by nightfall, the capital by morning. That soon. Her stomach twisted. Nervous? Varion asked. Should I be? Probably. He leans against a tree, arms crossed, casual, but his eyes were sharp. You're about to walk into the most dangerous court on the continent. People have been killed for less than what you're carrying. The mark? The mark, the bond, the implication. His gaze held hers. You're going to be a mystery, and mysteries make people paranoid. So what do I do? Survive the first week. After that, we'll see. Not exactly a plan. Soraya's jaw tightened. You could have warned me before, when you proposed this insanity. Would it have changed your answer? She wanted to say yes, but the truth sat heavy in her chest. No, she admitted. Varion nodded, like he'd expected that. You made the choice you needed to make. Now live with it. The bluntness should have stung. Instead, it felt like relief, because he wasn't coddling her, wasn't pretending this was anything other than what it was. A gamble, and she'd thrown the dice. Varion, she said quietly. Who are you, really? He was silent for a long moment. Then he pushed off the tree, moved closer, close enough that she could see the scars on his jaw, the ones that looked like claw marks. I'm the man who's ruled an empire for 15 years without bending, without breaking, without letting anyone close enough to matter. His voice was low, dangerous. Until now. Why me? Because you didn't ask to be saved. His eyes burned. You asked for terms. And that told me everything I needed to know. Soraya's breath caught. There was something raw in his expression, something that looked almost like loneliness. But before she could respond, one of the guards called out, Riders! North! Varion's entire demeanor shifted. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by something cold, lethal. He turned. How many? 3. Moving fast. Varion's hand went to his sword. Formation! Now! The guards moved instantly, surrounding Soraya, creating a barrier. She drew her blade. It felt good in her hand. Solid. What's happening? She asked. Don't know yet. Varion's voice was clipped. But if they're tracking us, it's not a coincidence. The riders came into view. 3 horses, moving fast like the guard said. But as they got closer, Soraya's heart stopped, because she recognized the lead rider. Dark hair, sharp features, riding like he owned the world. Kael. No, 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 no! What was he doing here? The riders pulled up short, 20 paces away. Kael dismounted, slowly, his eyes locked on Soraya, and the rage in them was volcanic. Soraya. His voice cut through the clearing. What the hell did you do? She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Kael was here, in front of her, and he looked like he wanted to rip the world apart. Varion stepped forward, placed himself between Soraya and Kael. You're trespassing. Kael's gaze cut to him. I don't know who you are, but that woman is under my jurisdiction. Was, Varian corrected, cold, final. You exiled her, remember? Kael's jaw clenched. That was a mistake. Funny, she didn't mention you changing your mind. I didn't. Kael broke off. His eyes found Soraya's. We need to talk. Soraya's hands shook. She forced them still. This was the moment. Face the past or walk away. But before she could speak, Varion moved. Not toward Kael, toward her. He took her left hand, the one with the mark, lifted it so Kael could see. The bond mark blazed in the sunlight. Kael's expression shattered. She's not yours to claim, Varian said quietly. Not anymore. The silence that followed was crushing. Kael stared at the mark, then at Soraya, and something in his face cracked open. Regret, raw, devastating. You married him. Kael's voice was hoarse. You married a stranger? Soraya found her voice. It came out steady, stronger than she felt. You threw me out. What did you expect? Not this. Kael took a step forward. Varion's guards shifted, hands on weapons. Kael stopped. Not you binding yourself to someone you don't even know. I know enough. Do you? Kael's laugh was bitter. Do you know who he is? A king. Not just any king. Kael's eyes were wild. That's Varion Thorn, the Wolf King, the man who conquered half the continent before he was 30. Enough, Varion interrupted. His voice was steel. Your history lessons not needed. But the damage was done. Soraya's mind reeled. The Wolf King. She'd heard the name. Everyone had. Stories whispered in the dark about a ruler so brutal, so merciless, that entire cities surrendered rather than face him. And she'd married him. Kael's gaze locked on hers, pleading. Come back. Please, we can fix this. I can fix this. The words she'd wanted to hear a day ago. But now they felt empty. You had your chance, Soraya said, quiet, final. You made your choice. I was wrong. Yes, you were. She stepped closer to Varian, not hiding, choosing. But that's not my problem anymore. Kael flinched like she'd struck him. Good. Let him feel it. Let him understand what it's like to lose something you didn't value until it was gone. Varion's hand found hers, squeezed once, a silent message. I've got you. Kael saw it, the connection, the bond, and his face went dark. This isn't over, he said. It is, Varian replied. Turn around, go home, and don't follow us again. Or what? Varion's smile was a blade. Or I'll give you a reason to remember why people fear my name. The threat hung in the air. Kael's men shifted, nervous, but Kael held his ground. You don't scare me. I don't need to. Varion's voice dropped. She already chose, and you already lost. The truth of it hit Kael like a blow. He looked at Soraya one last time, searching for something, weakness, doubt, regret. But she gave him nothing, just the locked door Corinne had told her to be. Finally, Kael turned, mounted his horse. Before he rode off, he called back. This won't end well, Soraya. Kings like him don't keep people. They use them. Then he was gone. The clearing fell silent. Soraya's knees went weak. She locked them, refused to fall. Varion turned to her. You all right? No. Yes, she lied. He saw through it. Of course he did. But he didn't push, just nodded. We ride, now, before he decides to come back with reinforcements. They mounted up, rode hard, and Soraya didn't look back. Tech. The outer territories appeared at dusk. Settlements clustered along the road. Small, functional. People stopped what they were doing to watch them pass. And when they saw Varion, they knelt. Every single one. Soraya's stomach twisted. This wasn't respect. This was something deeper. Submission born from fear and awe in equal measure. They rode through without stopping. The capital loomed ahead, a city of black stone and silver towers that rose against the darkening sky like teeth. Beautiful, terrifying. As they approached the main gates, guards snapped to attention. The gates opened without a word. Inside, the city was alive. Streets packed with people. Markets, taverns, noise and chaos and energy that felt almost violent in its intensity. But as Valerion passed, silence rippled outward. People stopped, stared, and knelt. Soraya's heart hammered. This was real. He wasn't just a king, he was the king, the Wolf King, and she'd bound herself to him. They climbed toward the palace, a fortress of black stone that dominated the skyline. Walls 30 feet high, guard towers at every corner. This wasn't a home. This was a statement. The inner courtyard was massive, paved in dark stone. Guards lined the walls, silent, watching. Varion dismounted, offered his hand to Soraya. She took it. The bond mark flared, and every guard in the courtyard saw it. Whispers started, low, urgent. Varion ignored them, led her toward the main doors. They opened. Inside, the palace was overwhelming. Vaulted ceilings, pillars carved with symbols she didn't recognize, tapestries depicting battles, conquests, kings kneeling before wolves, and at the far end of the entrance hall, a throne, massive, black stone, silver inlay, empty. Varion's throne. Footsteps echoed. A man appeared from a side corridor, older, gray beard, eyes sharp as glass. "My lord," he said. His gaze flicked to Soraya, paused. "You brought a guest." "Not a guest," Varion said. "My wife." The man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation. "I see." He bowed. Shallow. "Welcome, my lady. I am Chancellor Orin. I manage the palace affairs." Soraya inclined her head. "Thank you." Orin's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I trust your journey was uneventful?" "Eventful enough," Varion said. "Prepare the east wing. She'll need quarters." "Of course." Orin's gaze lingered on Soraya. "And the announcement? When shall we inform the court?" "Tomorrow." Varion's tone was final. "Formal reception. Full court." Orin bowed again. "As you command." He left. The silence pressed in. Soraya turned to Varion. "He doesn't like me." "He doesn't know you yet." Varion started walking. She followed. "Give him time. Orin's loyal, but he's cautious. New variables make him nervous." "I'm a variable? You're the first person I've brought here in 15 years who wasn't a prisoner or a diplomat." He glanced at her. "So yes, you're a variable." They climbed stairs. Endless stairs. Finally reached a corridor lined with doors. Varion stopped at one, opened it. The room beyond was vast, bed big enough for 5 people, windows overlooking the city, furniture that looked like it cost more than Soraya had earned in her entire life. "This is yours," Varion said. She stepped inside. It smelled like cedar and something else, something clean. "It's beautiful. It's a cage." His voice was quiet. "Don't mistake luxury for freedom." She turned. "Are you saying I'm a prisoner?" "No." He met her eyes. "I'm saying you'll feel like one until you learn how to navigate this place. And that takes time." The honesty was brutal, but she appreciated it. "Varion," she said, "why did you really marry me?" He was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped into the room, closed the door behind him. "Because I'm tired," he said finally. Tired of ruling alone. Tired of fighting battles where victory means nothing because there's no one to share it with. His gaze was raw. You asked for terms, not salvation. That told me you understood something most people never do. What? That power is lonely. And the only cure for loneliness is finding someone who doesn't need you to be anything other than what you are. Soraya's throat tightened. I don't know what I am, she whispered. Neither do I. His smile was sad. But we've got time to figure it out. He turned to leave. Varion. He stopped. Thank you, for earlier. With Kael. He looked back. Don't thank me. You handled it. I just made sure he understood the consequences. Still, he nodded. Once, then left. And Soraya was alone in a palace that felt like a tomb, wearing a mark she didn't understand, married to a king who'd conquered empires. She walked to the window, looked out at the city below. Lights flickered. Thousands of them. Somewhere out there, Kael was riding back to his territory. Back to Marala. Back to the life he'd chosen over her. And she was here, in a palace made of black stone and old blood. Bound to a man who ruled with fear and loneliness in equal measure. The bond mark pulsed on her hand. Warm. Alive. And despite everything, despite the fear and uncertainty and the crushing weight of what she'd done, Soraya felt something unfamiliar. Not happiness, not peace, but possibility. The door opened behind her. She spun. Corinne stood there, face grim. You need to see something, she said. What? The court's already talking. Word spread fast. Corinne's expression was stone. They're calling you the outsider queen, and there's a faction that wants you dead before sunrise. Soraya's blood went cold. Already? Power doesn't wait. Corinne stepped aside. Varion's calling an emergency council. You're expected. I don't know anything about court politics. Then learn fast. Corinne's gaze was hard, because the first move's already been made, and it's not in your favor. Soraya's hands curled into fists. This was it. The real test. Not the marriage, not the bond. Survival. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin. Let's go. Corinne's smile was sharp. Good. You might survive this after all. They walked through corridors that felt like they were closing in. Guards watched. Servants whispered. Everyone knew. Finally, they reached a set of massive doors, carved wood, silver handles. Corinne pushed them open. Inside, a council chamber, long table, chairs filled with people, and at the head of the table, Varion. He looked up as she entered. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Soraya understood. This wasn't just a council meeting. This was a trial, and she was the defendant. The council chamber smelled like old power and fresh conspiracy. Soraya stepped inside and felt the weight of every gaze land on her like stones. 12 people sat around that table. 11 she didn't know. 1 she did. Varion. He sat at the head, face carved from granite, giving her nothing, no reassurance, no acknowledgement. Just that cold, kingly stare that said she was on her own. Good. She didn't want his protection anyway. The door closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. Chancellor Orrin stood near the far wall, hands clasped behind his back. His expression was neutral, but his eyes tracked her every movement. A woman spoke first, middle-aged, sharp features, dressed in deep crimson that looked like dried blood. Lady Thessa Karn. Had to be. Soraya had heard the name whispered on the ride in. Head of the Northern Territories. Ruthless, connected, dangerous. Thessa's voice was silk over razors. So this is the outsider. Not a question, an accusation. Soraya met her gaze, didn't flinch. If that's what you want to call me. I call it what it is. Thessa leaned forward. A woman with no lineage, no standing, no allies, wearing the king's mark like she earned it. The venom in those words could have killed. Soraya's hands curled at her sides. Stay calm. Don't react. I didn't ask for your approval, she said quietly. No. Thessa's smile was vicious. But you'll need it. Because without this council's support, you're nothing, a liability waiting to be cut loose. Murmurs rippled around the table. Agreement, anticipation. They were circling, testing for blood. Varian's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Enough! Silence dropped. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. The authority in that single word was absolute. Soraya is my wife, Varian continued. His tone was flat, final. The bond is sealed. The mark is visible. Question her legitimacy, and you question mine. Thessa didn't back down. With respect, my lord, you've ruled alone for 15 years, built this empire without needing a partner, and now suddenly you return with a stranger and expect us to accept her without question. Yes. The bluntness of it made several council members shift uncomfortably, but Thessa held her ground. We have a right to know who she is, where she came from, what her intentions are. Her intentions are irrelevant, Varian said. She's here. She stays. End of discussion. It's not that simple. It is. Varian's gaze was ice. Unless you're suggesting I don't have the authority to make that decision. The threat underneath those words was unmistakable. Challenge me and see what happens. Thessa's jaw tightened, but she sat back. Of course not, my lord. Varian's attention shifted to Soraya. Sit. He gestured to an empty chair. Right side of the table. Close to him, but not beside him. A calculated placement. She walked over. Every eye followed. She could feel their judgment, their suspicion. Let them stare. She sat, spine straight, chin up, the locked door Corinne had told her to be. Another council member spoke. A man this time, older, gray-bearded, voice like gravel. Lord Cassian, military commander, war hero, the kind of man who measured worth in scars and victories. My lord, Cassian said, I mean no disrespect, but Lady Thessa raises a valid concern. We know nothing about this woman, her background, her loyalties. For all we know, she could be a plant, an infiltrator sent to weaken us from within. The accusation hung in the air. Soraya's pulse kicked up, but she kept her face blank. Valerian's expression didn't change. If I believed that, she wouldn't be here. You've been fooled before, Cassian said quietly. The room went still, because that statement carried weight. History. A wound that hadn't healed. Varian's eyes darkened. Careful. Cassian didn't back down. I'm being realistic. You brought her here without warning, without consultation. That's not like you. Maybe I'm tired of consulting. The words were sharp, edged with something that sounded almost like frustration. Soraya watched him, really watched him, and saw the cracks beneath the armor. This man who ruled an empire, who commanded armies, who made grown warriors kneel. He was exhausted, bone deep, soul tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying too much for too long with no one to share the weight. Thessa spoke again. We need assurances, proof that she's not a threat. What kind of proof? Varian's tone was dangerous. A trial, Thessa said. Let her face the court, publicly, prove her worth. Several council members nodded. Soraya's stomach dropped. A trial, in front of the entire court, where they'd pick her apart looking for weaknesses. It was a trap, and they all knew it. Varian's voice was cold. No. My lord, I said no. He stood. The entire room tensed. This council exists to advise, not command. I've made my decision. Soraya stays. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. The threat was clear and final. Thessa's expression tightened, but she didn't argue. Varian looked at Soraya. Come. She stood, followed him out. Behind them, the council chamber erupted in whispers. What? They walked in silence through corridors that felt like they were closing in. Finally, Varian stopped, turned to face her. That was a mess, he said. You handled it. I delayed it. His expression was grim. They're not going to let this go. Thessa's already building a coalition. By tomorrow, half the court will be demanding your head. Soraya's throat tightened. So what do we do? We? Varian's laugh was bitter. There is no we. Not yet. Right now you're a target, and I'm the only thing standing between you and a very public execution. The bluntness hit like a slap. Then why bring me here? Soraya demanded. If you knew this would happen, why go through with it? Because I needed to. His voice was raw. And because I thought you were strong enough to survive it. You thought? Starting to wonder. The words cut, deep. Soraya's hands shook. She forced them still. I didn't ask for this. You proposed. You made the offer. I just accepted terms. And now you're learning what those terms cost. Then teach me. Her voice cracked. Tell me how to survive this place, because right now I'm drowning, and you're just watching. Varian's expression softened, barely. You think I'm not fighting for you? I think you're fighting for your reputation. There's a difference. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Then Varian stepped closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. The weight. You're right, he said quietly. I am fighting for my reputation, because in this world, reputation is everything. Lose it, and you lose the empire. His gaze held hers. But that doesn't mean I don't care what happens to you. Could have fooled me. Good. His smile was sad, because the moment they think I care, they'll use you to destroy me. And I won't let that happen. The philosophy underneath that statement was brutal. In the world of absolute power, affection was weakness. Connection was vulnerability. And the people closest to you were the easiest weapons for your enemies to wield. So you kept them at arm's length, protected them through distance rather than proximity. It was strategic. And it was lonely as hell. Soraya's anger drained, replaced by something colder, understanding. You don't trust anyone, she said. No, not even me, especially not you. He didn't apologize for it. You're too new, too unknown, and until I know what you want, what you're capable of, I can't afford to let my guard down. What if I told you I don't want anything? I'd call you a liar. His voice was gentle, almost kind. Everyone wants something. The question is whether you're smart enough to negotiate for it or stupid enough to take it by force. Soraya's chest ached. Because he was right, she did want something, revenge. Not the hot, messy kind that made you stupid. The cold, calculated kind that made you dangerous. She wanted Kael to regret every choice that led to her exile. Wanted Marilla to understand what it felt like to be replaced. Wanted the entire court that had watched her fall to see her rise. And Varian knew it, could read it in her eyes like he was flipping through pages of a book. There it is, he said. The truth. What truth? You're not here to survive. His smile was sharp. You're here to win. Her breath caught. And that, Varian continued, is why I chose you. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed down the corridor. A guard appeared, young, nervous. My lord, he said, urgent message from the border. Varian's expression shifted. All business. What is it? Kael Draven's forces. They're mobilizing. Soraya's blood went cold. How many? Varian asked. 50, maybe more. Moving south, toward the capital, toward her. Varian cursed under his breath. Alert the garrison. Double the perimeter guards. No one enters without clearance. The guard saluted and ran. Soraya's mind raced. He's coming for me. Looks like it. Why? He cast me out. He made his choice. And now he's realizing what a mistake that was. Varian's voice was grim. Men like Kyle don't handle rejection well, especially not when the person who rejected them ends up with someone more powerful. The words settled like stones in her stomach. This wasn't about her. This was about ego, pride, the refusal to accept that someone he'd thrown away had found value elsewhere. What do we do? She asked. We prepare. Varian started walking, fast. If he's stupid enough to attack, we'll crush him. But if he's smart, he'll use this politically, make you the villain, claim you manipulated your way into power. I didn't. Doesn't matter. Varian's tone was sharp. Perception is reality. And right now you look like exactly what Thessa accused you of being, an outsider with unknown motives who married a king overnight. The trap was closing. From inside the court. From outside. And Soraya was standing in the middle with no allies and no leverage. They reached Varian's war room. Maps covered every surface. Markers indicating territories. Troop movements. Supply lines. Varian studied them. If Kael attacks directly, we have the advantage. Better trained forces, better fortifications. His finger traced a route. But if he goes to the council first, claims I kidnapped you or coerced you, things get messy. I wasn't coerced. Can you prove that? Could she? The bond had formed so fast, in the dark, under an archway, with a stranger. From the outside, it looked exactly like coercion. This is bad, Soraya said quietly. This is war. Varian looked at her. And you're the battlefield. The truth of it hit like a hammer. She wasn't a queen. She was a weapon. And everyone was fighting for control. What do you need from me? She asked. Varian's expression was unreadable. I need you to be smarter than they think you are, stronger than they believe, and ruthless enough to do what's necessary when the moment comes. Which is? He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, choose me, publicly, irrevocably, in a way they can't twist or deny. Soraya's pulse hammered. How? Tomorrow. The formal reception. When the court gathers, his voice was low, intense. Stand beside me. Not behind. Not hidden. Beside. And when they question you, when they push, don't defend yourself. Then what do I do? Varian's smile was dangerous. You attack. That's. The night crawled by like a wounded animal. Soraya couldn't sleep. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow felt like a threat. She stood at the window watching the city below. Lights flickered. Guards moved on patrol. Somewhere out there, Kael was mobilizing forces, coming for her. And inside the palace, Thessa and her coalition were plotting. She was surrounded. Trapped. The bond mark on her hand pulsed, warm, steady. A reminder that she wasn't entirely alone. But it didn't feel like comfort. It felt like a leash. A knock at the door made her turn. Come in, she called. Corinne entered. She carried a tray, food, wine. You need to eat, Corinne said. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. Tomorrow's going to be brutal and you can't afford to be weak. Soraya's jaw tightened, but she took the tray, forced herself to swallow a few bites. It tasted like ash. Corinne watched her. You look like hell. I feel like it. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Varian said the same thing. He's right. Corinne sat. Listen, tomorrow, when you walk into that reception, every eye is going to be on you, looking for weakness, fear, doubt. They'll test you, push you, try to break you. I know. Do you? Corinne's voice was hard. Because I've seen plenty of people walk into that court thinking they could handle it. Most of them didn't walk back out. Soraya met her eyes. I'm not most people. Prove it. The challenge hung between them. Soraya set the tray aside. What do you want from me, Corinne? Why are you helping? Because Varian needs someone who isn't afraid of him. And you're the first person in 15 years who looked him in the eye and didn't flinch. Corinne's expression softened. He's a good king, but he's a terrible human. Doesn't know how to let people in. Doesn't know how to trust. So you think I can fix him? No. Corinne's smile was sad. I think you can survive him. And maybe that's enough. The words settled heavy. Soraya looked down at her hands. The mark. The bond. What if I can't? She whispered. Then you die. Corinne stood. But at least you'll die trying. That's more than most people can say. She left, and Soraya was alone again with her thoughts and her fear and the crushing weight of tomorrow. Dawn came too fast. Soraya dressed in the formal gown Corinne had left, deep blue, silver embroidery. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for her, which it probably had. Varian's people were thorough. She studied herself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked like a stranger, elegant, poised, dangerous. Not the exile who'd stumbled through rain, someone new, someone harder. The door opened. Varian stepped inside. He wore full regalia, black and silver. Crown of twisted metal that looked like thorns. He looked every inch a king and terrifying. His eyes found hers. Ready? No? Good. He offered his arm. Let's go. She took it. They walked through corridors filled with guards, servants, nobles already gathering for the reception. Everyone stopped, stared. The whispers were immediate. Who is she? Where did she come from? Why her? Soraya kept her face blank, emotionless. The locked door. They reached the great hall. Massive, vaulted ceilings, chandeliers dripping crystal. At the far end, 2 thrones, one larger, one smaller, his and hers. The hall was already packed, hundreds of people, all dressed in their finest, all watching. Varion led her down the center aisle. Every step echoed. They reached the thrones. He turned to face the crowd. Today I present to you my wife, Soraya Virel, bound to me by blood and bond, recognized by law and power. The formal declaration. Unbreakable. Unless someone challenged it. Thessa stepped forward from the crowd. Of course she did. My lord, she said, voice carrying. With all due respect, the court requests proof of legitimacy. Varion's expression didn't change. The bond mark is proof. Bond marks can be faked. Gasps rippled through the hall. That was a direct accusation. Fraud, deception, treason. Varion's voice went cold. Are you questioning my judgment, Lady Thessa? I'm questioning the circumstances. Thessa's gaze was steel. A woman appears from nowhere, no lineage, no allies, and within days she wears your mark. It's convenient. Murmurs of agreement. The crowd was turning. Soraya's hands curled into fists. This was the moment. Attack, Varion had said. Don't defend. Attack. She stepped forward. You want proof? Thessa's eyes narrowed. Yes. Fine, Soraya's voice rang out, clear, strong. I came from the Northern Territories, exiled by Kyle Draven for questioning his leadership, for refusing to be silent while his council bled resources and ignored the people suffering at the borders. Shock rippled through the hall. She wasn't defending, she was exposing. I didn't ask for this bond, Soraya continued. I didn't scheme, didn't manipulate. I made a choice to survive, to move forward, and King Varion offered me that opportunity. Thessa's expression hardened. Convenient that your exile led you directly to the most powerful man on the continent. Convenient? Soraya's laugh was sharp. You think I plan to be thrown out? To lose everything I built? To stand in front of a court that watched me bleed and did nothing? Her voice dropped. Dangerous. No. What's convenient is you using my past to undermine me because you're afraid. Afraid of what? That I'm exactly what you accused me of being. Soraya stepped closer. An outsider. Someone who doesn't owe you anything, who isn't part of your carefully constructed power structure. Someone who might actually change things. The silence was deafening. Thessa's jaw clenched. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I? Soraya's gaze swept the crowd. How many of you came from nothing? How many fought your way up only to realize the system's rigged? That power protects power, and everyone else gets scraps? Faces in the crowd shifted. Recognition. Agreement. She was hitting a nerve. That's what you're really afraid of, Soraya said. Not that I'm a fraud. That I'm real. That I might actually represent something beyond your control. Thessa's eyes blazed. You're out of line. No. Varion's voice cut through. He'd moved beside Soraya. She's not. The crowd tensed, because that was an endorsement, a public one. Soraya is my wife, Varion continued. My choice, and anyone who challenges that challenges me. Is that clear? Silence. Then, slowly, people began to bow. Not all of them, but enough. Thessa stood frozen, fury radiating off her, but she bowed, because refusing would be suicide. Varion turned to Soraya, extended his hand. She took it. They sat on the thrones, together, and the court watched, some with respect, some with fear, some with hatred that would fester and grow, but they watched, and Soraya understood. This wasn't a victory. This was the opening move. The real war was just beginning. The reception lasted hours. Nobles approached, offered congratulations that felt like threats, smiled with teeth that wanted to bite. Soraya played her part, gracious, composed. The locked door. But inside she was screaming. Finally, it ended. Varian led her back to her quarters. They walked in silence. At her door, he stopped. "You did well," he said. "I made enemies." "You would have made them anyway." His expression was unreadable. "At least now they know you're not an easy target." "Is that supposed to be comforting?" "No, it's supposed to be true." Soraya's exhaustion hit like a wave. "How long does this last? The testing, the pushing?" "Until they accept you," Varian's voice was quiet. "Or until you break." "What if I don't want to do this anymore?" "Then you leave." He met her eyes. "I meant what I said. No chains. You walk whenever you want." The offer hung between them. Tempting. She could go. Disappear. Start over somewhere far from courts and kings and politics that wanted to drown her. But that would mean Kael won. Thessa won. Everyone who'd ever told her she was too weak, too small, too insignificant, they'd all win. And she'd spend the rest of her life knowing she ran. "I'm not leaving," she said. Varian's expression softened. "Good." He turned to go. "Varian." He stopped. "Thank you for backing me in there." "I didn't back you." His voice was careful. "You backed yourself. I just didn't stop you." "Still." He nodded once, then left. Soraya went inside, closed the door, leaned against it, and let the shaking start. She'd survived, barely, but the cost was starting to show. 3 days passed. Kael's forces reached the border but didn't cross. Just sat there, waiting. A psychological game. Inside the palace, Thessa's coalition grew. Whispers turned to meetings. Meetings turned to plans. Soraya could feel the noose tightening. On the 4th day, Varian called her to his study. She found him staring at a letter, face carved from stone. "What is it?" she asked. He handed it to her. The seal was Kael's. Inside, formal script, a challenge. Kael demanded Soraya's return, claimed the bond was illegal, that she'd been coerced, and if Varian refused, Kael would bring the matter before the Continental Council, the highest authority, the one body that could overrule even a king. Soraya's hands shook. "This is strategic," Varian finished. "He can't win militarily, so he's going legal, smart. What do we do?" Varian was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "We prove the bond is legitimate, publicly, irrevocably." "How?" His eyes met hers, and she saw something she'd never seen before. Fear. "There's a ritual," he said quietly. "Old magic. It reveals the truth of a bond. Whether it was chosen freely or forced, the council recognizes it as absolute proof. Then we do it." "Soraya," his voice was strained. "If we do this, if we perform the ritual, it'll reveal everything, not just the bond, everything, your lineage, your essence, every secret buried in your blood." Her stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying there are things about you that you don't know. Things I only suspected until I saw the way the palace wards reacted to your presence." He stepped closer. "And if the ritual confirms what I think it will, everything changes." "What do you think I am?" Varian's expression was raw, haunted. "Not just an exile," he said. "Not just a woman looking for revenge." "Then what?" He took a breath. "My sister." The world stopped. "What?" "The bloodline." His voice was barely above a whisper. "The way you carry yourself. The way the ancient magic in this place recognized you. I thought I was imagining it, but the more time I spend around you, the more certain I am." Soraya couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Varian's eyes were desperate. "My sister disappeared 25 years ago. Taken, hidden. Everyone assumed she was dead, but what if she wasn't? What if she survived, had a child? You're saying I'm royal blood." His voice cracked. "Not just any royal. The heir that was supposed to rule alongside me." Soraya's knees buckled. Varian caught her. "This can't be real," she whispered. "The ritual will prove it, one way or another." His grip tightened. "But if I'm right, If you are who I think you are, then our bond isn't just problematic. It's forbidden. Yes, because siblings couldn't bond, not legally, not magically. It violated every law, every code. What do we do? Soraya's voice was small, broken. Varion's expression was torn. We have two choices, he said. We run the ritual, prove the bond is real, and accept whatever truth comes with it. He paused. Or we don't. We refuse the challenge and let the council decide. Which ends with them annulling the bond and sending me back to Kael. Probably. Soraya's mind raced. Option 1. The truth. Whatever that meant. Even if it destroyed everything. Option 2. Submission. Defeat. Everything she'd fought against. There was no good choice. Only survival. And survival meant choosing the option that gave her power, even if that power came with a price she didn't want to pay. We do the ritual, she said. Varion's eyes closed. Soraya. We do it. Her voice was steel. Because I'm not going back. I'm not letting them win. And if the truth breaks me, then at least I'll know. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Tomorrow, he said, before the full court. We'll summon the keepers, perform the ritual. And if you're right, if I am your sister, Varion's smile was broken. Then we figure out how to survive what comes next. He left, and Soraya stood alone in his study, staring at her hands. The mark pulsed, warm, alive, forbidden. And tomorrow, the entire world would know the truth. Whatever that truth was, she'd chosen power over safety, ambition over peace, and now she was about to pay the price. The night before the ritual, Soraya didn't sleep. She stood at the window watching storm clouds gather over the capital. Lightning flickered in the distance, thunder rolled low and ominous. The empire itself seemed to know what was coming. Behind her, the door opened. She didn't turn, didn't need to. She'd learned to recognize his footsteps. Varion crossed the room, stopped beside her. They stood in silence, watching the storm approach. Last chance to run, he said quietly. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. His voice was strained. After tomorrow, there's no going back. Whatever the ritual reveals, we're locked in. Soraya turned to face him. Really look at him, this man who'd offered her escape, who'd bound himself to her without knowing the cost, who now stood on the edge of losing everything because he'd been desperate enough to take a risk. Why did you really choose me? She asked. And don't give me the line about recognizing potential. Tell me the truth. Varion's expression cracked open. Raw. Because I was drowning, he said. 15 years of ruling alone, making decisions that broke me piece by piece. Watching people I cared about die or leave or betray me until I stopped letting anyone close. His voice dropped. And then I saw you under that archway, soaked, shaking, but not broken. And I thought maybe, just maybe, you understood what it's like to survive something that should have killed you. The honesty hit like a fist to the chest. Soraya's throat tightened. I do. I know. His hand found hers. The bond mark flared. That's why this is going to hurt so much. What do you mean? Tomorrow, when the ritual reveals what you are, when the truth comes out, the court won't just reject you. His eyes were haunted. They'll demand your execution, because a forbidden bond isn't just illegal. It's an abomination, a threat to the natural order. And if I run, they'll hunt you, brand you, make you an example. So I'm dead either way. Maybe. Varion's grip tightened. Unless we fight. Fight how? The law is absolute. The law is written by people who benefit from it. His voice was steel. And people can be overthrown. Soraya's pulse kicked up. You're talking about rebellion. I'm talking about survival. He stepped closer. The court thinks I'm untouchable, that I'll sacrifice anything to maintain power. But they're wrong. What would you sacrifice? Varion's eyes burned into hers. Everything, he whispered. For you, I'd burn this empire to the ground. The words hung between them, dangerous, reckless, true. And Soraya understood something fundamental about power that she'd never grasped before. Real power wasn't about control. It was about what you were willing to destroy to protect what mattered. And Varion had just declared war on his own empire. For her. Don't, she said quietly. Don't throw away everything you built for me. Why not? Because I'm not worth it. His laugh was bitter. You don't get to decide that. Then who does? I do. His hand cupped her face, gentle, desperate. And I decided the moment I saw you that you were worth saving, even if saving you destroys me. Soraya's chest ached because she'd spent her entire life believing she had to earn her value, prove her worth, fight for every scrap of recognition, and here was a king telling her she was worth an empire, without conditions, without requirements, just because he'd chosen her. The philosophy underneath that was staggering. In a world built on hierarchies where value was transactional and love was leverage, the idea that someone could choose you without needing something in return was revolutionary. And terrifying, because it meant you mattered, not for what you could do, but for who you were. I don't know how to do this, Soraya whispered. Neither do I. Varian's forehead pressed against hers. But we'll figure it out, together. The storm broke outside. Rain lashed the windows. And inside that room, two people who'd been alone their entire lives held each other like the world was ending. Because tomorrow, it might. What? Dawn came gray and cold. The great hall was packed. Every noble, every council member, every person with enough standing to demand entry. They'd come to watch. Some hoped for vindication, others for scandal. Most just wanted blood. Soraya stood in the antechamber, dressed in white. The ritual required it. Purity, transparency, symbolic bullshit that made her skin crawl. Corinne adjusted the fabric. You look terrified. I am. Good. Use it. Corinne's hands stilled. Listen to me. When you walk out there, when the ritual starts, it's going to hurt. The magic will rip through you looking for truth. Don't fight it. Let it happen. What if the truth kills me? Then you die honest. Corinne's expression was hard. Better than living a lie. The doors opened. Varian stood there, also in white, also looking like he was walking to his execution. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Understanding. Acceptance. Whatever happened next, they'd face it together. They walked into the hall, side by side. The crowd fell silent. At the center of the hall, a circle had been drawn. Intricate symbols, old magic that predated the empire itself. And standing beside it, three figures in robes, the keepers, guardians of ancient law. They'd performed this ritual 1,000 times, and never once had it ended well for the accused. The lead keeper spoke, voice like grinding stone. Varian Thorn, Soraya Virel, you stand accused of bond fraud. Do you submit to the ritual of truth? We do, Varian said. Then enter the circle. They stepped inside. The moment their feet crossed the line, the air shifted, thickened, magic pressed down like a physical weight. Soraya's knees buckled. Varian caught her. The keeper raised his hands. Let the truth be revealed. Light exploded. White, blinding. Soraya screamed, because the magic wasn't gentle. It tore through her like claws, ripping, searching, dragging every secret, every buried memory, every hidden truth to the surface. She felt her past unravel, her childhood, fragmented, wrong, memories that didn't fit. A woman's face, kind eyes, hands that held her. A voice that whispered promises of safety. Your name is Soraya. Remember that. No matter what they tell you, you are Soraya. Then darkness, pain, being torn away from those hands, screaming, fighting. They'd taken her, hidden her, made her forget. But the magic remembered. And it showed her the truth. She wasn't just an orphan raised in the territories. She was blood, royal blood. The images came faster. A palace, different from this one, softer. A man who looked like Valerian, but younger, kinder, holding a baby. My daughter, he'd said. The air, then war, betrayal, the palace burning, the baby disappearing, presumed dead. But she hadn't died. She'd been hidden, protected, raised in obscurity to keep her safe from those who'd kill her for what she represented, a threat to the new order, a rightful heir. The light shifted. Gold and silver intertwined. Soraya's form changed, not physically, But the magic revealed what lay beneath the human shell: alpha dominance, royal sovereignty, fused into something that shouldn't exist. The crowd gasped, because they could see it now. The truth written in light and power. She wasn't just Varion's wife, she was his sister, the heir who'd been stolen, the one who should have ruled beside him. The light faded. Soraya collapsed. Varion caught her, held her. The silence in the hall was crushing. Then Thessa's voice cut through. Sharp. Victorious. Forbidden bond. The law is clear. They must be separated, immediately. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. The lead keeper spoke. The ritual has confirmed the blood relation. By law, the bond must be dissolved. No. Varion's voice rang out. The bond is sealed. You can't break it. We can try. And kill her in the process? Varion's eyes were wild. The bond's too deep. Ripping it apart will tear her soul to pieces. Then she dies for violating sacred law. The brutality of that statement hit like a hammer, because they didn't care if she lived or died. They just wanted the problem eliminated. Soraya found her voice. Hoarse. Broken. I didn't know. Ignorance is not innocence, Thessa said coldly. The bond exists. That's enough. Then punish me. Soraya forced herself to stand, legs shaking. Not him. He didn't know either. You both knew something was wrong, Thessa countered. You felt it, and you proceeded anyway. Because we were desperate, Soraya's voice cracked. Because we were alone, because for one moment we thought we'd found someone who understood. How touching. Thessa's smile was vicious, but irrelevant. The crowd was turning. Soraya could feel it. They'd made up their minds. She was guilty, and the sentence was death. Varion stepped forward, placed himself between Soraya and the keepers. If you want her, you go through me. The hall erupted, guards moved, hands on weapons. The keeper's expressions hardened. Stand down, my lord, the lead keeper said. You cannot protect her from the law. Watch me. The threat was clear, absolute, and insane, because fighting the keepers meant fighting the entire structure of power that held the empire together. It meant civil war. Thessa stepped forward. My lord, please, be reasonable. One woman is not worth… she's worth everything. Varion's voice was steel. And if you try to take her, I'll show you exactly what a king without restraint looks like. The temperature in the room dropped, because everyone understood what he was saying. The Wolf King wasn't just a title, it was a warning, and they'd just pushed him past his breaking point. Soraya's mind raced. This was spiraling. Varion was going to start a war he couldn't win, for her. She had to stop it, had to find another way. But before she could speak, the doors at the far end of the hall burst open. Kael strode in, 50 armed men behind him. The hall exploded into chaos. Guards drew weapons, nobles scattered. Kael's eyes found Soraya. I'm here to claim what's mine. She's not yours, Varion snarled. The bond's illegal. Void. She comes with me. Over my dead body. That can be arranged. The two men faced each other. Alphas, kings in their own right, and Soraya stood between them. The woman they were fighting over. The prize. The weapon. She was so tired of being a thing people fought for. So she did the one thing no one expected. She stepped out of the circle, walked to the center of the hall, and unleashed everything the ritual had revealed. Power exploded outward, gold and silver light. Alpha dominance that made grown men drop to their knees. Royal sovereignty that bent the air itself. The entire hall shook. Soraya's voice rang out, not loud, but absolute. Enough! Everyone froze, because the power radiating off her was undeniable. This wasn't a woman begging for mercy. This was a sovereign claiming her birthright. I am not a prize, Soraya said. Her voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. I am not a weapon. I am not yours to claim or discard or control. She turned to Kael. You threw me away. You don't get to take me back. Then to Thessa. You wanted me dead because I threatened your power, but you were right to be afraid. Her gaze swept the crowd. All of you. You built a system where people like me are erased, hidden, controlled, because you're terrified of what happens when we stop accepting the chains you put on us. The light intensified. I didn't ask to be born into this bloodline. Didn't ask to be stolen or hidden or raised in ignorance, but I'm done apologizing for existing. Her eyes found Varian. And I'm done letting other people decide my worth. She turned back to the keepers. You want to dissolve the bond? Try. But understand this. If you kill me, you're not just eliminating a problem. You're proving that this empire is built on fear, and fear is a terrible foundation. The lead keeper's expression was unreadable. What are you proposing? A choice. Soraya's voice was steady. Let the bond stand. Recognize it for what it is. An anomaly, a mistake, but one made in ignorance, or destroy it in me, and live with the consequences. What consequences? Soraya's smile was cold. Civil war. Because Varian would burn the empire down before letting them kill her. And half the territories that had been waiting for an excuse to rebel would join him. The empire would fracture. And everyone in this hall knew it. The keeper was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to the council. What say you? Thessa's face was twisted with rage. This is blackmail. This is reality, Varian said quietly. He'd moved beside Soraya. She's right. You have a choice. Adapt or burn. The council members looked at each other, calculations happening behind their eyes. Finally, Lord Cassian stood. I vote to let the bond stand. Gasps rippled through the hall. Thessa's head snapped toward him. You can't be serious. I'm being practical. Cassian's gaze was steady. She's right. Killing her starts a war we can't win. And for what? To preserve a law that's already been broken? The law is absolute. The law is what we say it is, Cassian interrupted. And I say one exception is better than a civil war. One by one, other council members stood, agreeing. Not because they believed in Soraya, but because they believed in survival. And survival meant compromise. Thessa's expression shattered. This is a mistake. Maybe, Varian said, but it's ours to make. The lead keeper raised his hand. By majority vote, the bond stands, with conditions. Soraya's stomach dropped. Of course there were conditions. The bond remains, the keeper continued, but you will not rule as king and queen. The appearance of propriety must be maintained. Publicly, you are political allies. Nothing more. And privately? Varian asked. Privately is your business. But any display of affection, any suggestion of the bond's true nature, will be considered treason. The compromise was brutal. They could stay together, but they had to pretend they weren't, hide what they meant to each other, lie, forever. Soraya looked at Varian. He looked back, and she saw the same exhaustion in his eyes, the same resignation. They'd survived, but the cost was their truth. We accept, Varian said. The keeper nodded. Then this matter is closed. The crowd began to disperse. Kyle stood frozen, fury radiating off him. This isn't over, he said. Yes, Soraya replied quietly. It is. He stared at her for a long moment, then turned and left. His men followed. The hall emptied. Finally, only Soraya and Varian remained. They stood in the center of the ritual circle, exhausted, victorious, broken. We won, Soraya said. Did we? Varian's voice was hollow. Because winning meant survival. But survival wasn't the same as living. They'd fought for the right to be together, and earned a prison sentence instead. What do we do now? Soraya asked. Varian took her hand. The bond mark pulsed. Warm, alive, forbidden. We survive, he said, and we find a way to change the system from the inside. How? His smile was dangerous. By becoming so powerful, they can't afford to challenge us. Soraya's breath caught, because that wasn't surrender. That was strategy. They couldn't change the law now, but they could build enough power to rewrite it later. How long will that take? She asked. Years, maybe decades. And until then, we play the game. Varian's eyes burned. We smile. We compromise. We pretend. And privately? He pulled her close, lips brushing her ear. Privately, we build an empire they'll never see coming. The promise in those words was absolute and terrifying. Because they weren't just talking about political power. They were talking about revolution, the kind that started quiet and ended with the world on fire. Soraya's pulse hammered. This was insane, impossible, and exactly what she needed. "I'm in," she whispered. Varion's smile was sharp. "Good, because the real war just started." 3 months passed. On the surface, everything was perfect. Soraya played her role. The political ally. The reformed exile. She attended councils, smiled at the right people, made alliances. And in the shadows, she and Varion built something else. A network. People who'd been overlooked, underestimated, cast aside. They recruited them quietly, gave them power, resources, purpose. And slowly the empire began to shift. Not obviously, but fundamentally. Thessa noticed first. She came to Soraya's quarters one night, face tight with fury. "What are you doing?" she demanded. Soraya looked up from her desk. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play games. Half my supporters have switched sides. Resources are being redirected, and every time I try to push back, I run into walls. Perhaps your supporters found better opportunities." "This is you." Thessa's eyes blazed. "You and Varion. You're undermining the council. We're rebuilding it." Soraya's voice was calm, making it functional, efficient, less corrupt. "You mean making it loyal to you? Is there a difference?" Thessa's laugh was bitter. "You're more dangerous than I thought." "Good." Soraya stood. "Because I'm done being underestimated." Thessa's expression hardened. "This won't end well." "For you? Probably not." Soraya moved closer. "But for the Empire? For the people you've been bleeding dry? It'll end exactly how it should. You're declaring war." "No." Soraya's smile was cold. "I'm finishing one you started the day you tried to have me killed." Thessa's hands curled into fists. But she didn't strike. Couldn't. Because the balance of power had shifted, and she knew it. "Watch your back," Thessa said. Then she left. Soraya stood alone in her quarters, heart pounding, because that conversation had been a declaration, open conflict. The game was over. Now it was war. And she was ready. Ichamtu. That night Varion came to her. They stood on her balcony overlooking the city. "Thessa knows," Soraya said. "Good. You wanted her to know?" "I wanted her to understand." Varion's voice was quiet. "That we're not hiding anymore. Not waiting. We're taking what should have been ours from the beginning. And if she fights back, then we crush her." His eyes were cold. No mercy. No hesitation. Soraya's pulse kicked up because this was the moment. The point where they stopped being victims and became something else. Something harder. "When?" she asked. "Soon." Varion turned to face her. "We've built the foundation. Now we need the catalyst." "What kind of catalyst?" His smile was dangerous. The kind that forces everyone to choose a side. Before she could ask what he meant, bells rang out across the city. Alarm bells. Varion's expression sharpened. "What?" An explosion rocked the palace. The balcony shook. Soraya grabbed the railing. Another explosion, then screams. "We're under attack," Varion said. "By who?" "Does it matter?" He was right. It didn't. They ran. Through corridors filled with smoke, guards shouting, people fleeing. The palace was burning. They reached the war room. Orin was there, face grim. "Report," Varian snapped. "Coordinated assault. Multiple entry points. Professional. Well-armed." "Who's behind it?" "Unknown, but they're heading for the throne room." Varian cursed. "Seal the inner chambers. Get the civilians to safety." "My lord." "Now." Orin ran. Varian turned to Soraya. "You need to hide." "No." "This isn't negotiable." "Neither am I." Soraya's voice was steel. "You said we were in this together. That means I fight." Varian's expression was torn. Then he handed her a blade. "Stay close." They moved through the palace. Guards fell in around them. A dozen, armed, ready. They reached the throne room. The doors were blown open. Inside, chaos, bodies, blood. And at the center of it all, a figure in dark armor. They turned, and Soraya's blood went cold because she recognized that face. Marala, Kael's replacement, the woman who'd taken Soraya's place, and now she'd come to finish what Thessa started. Marala's smile was vicious. "Hello, Soraya. What are you doing here?" "Taking back what you stole." "I didn't steal anything." "You stole my future." Marala's voice was poison. "Kael was supposed to be mine. This empire was supposed to be mine, and you ruined it. Kael cast me out, and you made him regret it." Marala stepped forward, made him realize what he lost, made him weak, and for that, you need to die. She attacked, fast, brutal. Soraya barely got her blade up in time. Metal screamed. They fought across the throne room. Marala was trained, professional, every strike precise. But Soraya was desperate, and desperation made you dangerous. They clashed, again. Soraya's arms screamed, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop, because this was it, the final confrontation. Winner lived, loser died. Marala's blade sliced across Soraya's arm. Pain exploded. Blood flowed. But Soraya used the momentum, spun, drove her blade up. It caught Marala in the side. She gasped, stumbled, fell. Soraya stood over her, breathing hard. "You want to know the difference between us?" Soraya said quietly. "You thought power was given. I learned it's taken." Marala's eyes went dark, then still. Soraya turned. Varion stood across the room, surrounded by bodies. He'd carved through them like they were nothing, the Wolf King in full. Their eyes met, and Soraya understood. This was who they were now, not victims, not exiles, survivors who'd become predators. "It's done," Varion said. Because the attack had been too coordinated, too precise. This wasn't just Marala acting alone. Someone had funded this, planned it, and Soraya had a sinking feeling she knew who. The doors opened. Thessa walked in. Not surprised, not shocked, expected. "Well," she said, "that was entertaining." Varion's blade came up. "You planned this. I provided an opportunity." Thessa's smile was cold. "Marala wanted revenge. I wanted you both dead. Seemed like a win-win. Except we're not dead." "No." Thessa's expression hardened. "But you will be." She raised her hand, and the walls exploded. Guards poured in, 50, 100, all loyal to Thessa, all armed, all here to kill. Soraya's heart stopped. They were surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned. This was it, the end. Varion grabbed her hand. "Whatever happens, I know." Their eyes met. One last moment, then the guards attacked, and the throne room became a war zone. The first wave of guards hit like a storm, steel on steel, screams, blood spraying across marble floors that had never seen this kind of violence. Soraya fought beside Varion, blade moving on instinct. Block, parry, strike. Her arms burned, her lungs screamed, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop, because stopping meant death. A guard came at her from the left. She pivoted, drove her blade through his guard. He dropped. Another took his place, then another. They kept coming, endless. Beside her, Varian moved like a force of nature, every strike lethal, precise, the Wolf King earning his name with every body that fell. But there were too many. For every guard they dropped, 3 more appeared. Thessa watched from the doorway, safe, untouchable, her expression carved from stone. Soraya's vision blurred, sweat and blood in her eyes. Her grip on the blade was slipping. They were losing. A blade caught her shoulder. Pain exploded. She stumbled. A guard raised his sword for the killing blow. Then his head separated from his body. Varion stood there, face splattered with blood, eyes wild. He grabbed Soraya's arm, pulled her close. They were back to back now, surrounded, bleeding, dying. This is it, Soraya thought. This is how it ends. But then something happened. The palace shook, not from explosions, from power. The bond mark on Soraya's hand flared, white hot, agonizing. Varion's did the same. and the magic that had been dormant since the ritual woke up. It didn't ask permission. It erupted. Gold and silver light exploded outward, a shockwave of pure dominance that slammed into every guard in the throne room. They dropped. Not dead, unconscious, overwhelmed by power that their bodies couldn't process. The light faded. Silence crashed down. Soraya and Varian stood alone in a room full of bodies, most breathing, some not. And at the doorway, Thessa stared, face drained of color. Because she'd just witnessed something impossible. A bond so powerful it could render an entire force helpless without a single blade being raised. Soraya's legs buckled. Varian caught her. They were both shaking, exhausted, barely standing, but alive. Thessa took a step back. "What are you?" Soraya met her gaze. "The thing you tried to erase." Thessa's expression twisted. Fear, rage, desperation. She turned to run. Varian's voice cut him through. "Don't!" Thessa froze. "You wanted war," Varian said quietly. "You orchestrated this, funded it, planned every move thinking we'd fall." He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. "But you forgot something." "What?" "Survivors don't follow rules," his voice was ice. "We make our own." Thessa's hands shook. "You can't kill me. The Council will understand." Varian's blade came up. "Or they won't. Either way, you're done." For the first time, real fear crossed Thessa's face. Because she'd spent her entire life believing power came from position, status, alliances. But standing in front of her was proof that real power came from something else entirely. The willingness to lose everything and keep fighting anyway. "Please," Thessa whispered. The word hung in the air. Pathetic. Broken. Soraya felt something shift in her chest. Not pity, but understanding. Because Thessa had built her entire life on control. On maintaining the system that kept her safe. And now that system was crumbling, and she had nothing left. No dignity, no power, just fear. And in that moment, Soraya understood something fundamental about revenge. It was empty. Killing Thessa wouldn't fix anything, wouldn't undo the betrayal, wouldn't make the Empire better. It would just be another body on a pile of bodies, another cycle of violence that never ended. Soraya's hand found Varian's arm. "Don't." He looked at her, eyes wild. "She tried to kill us." "I know." "She orchestrated everything." "I know." Soraya's voice was steady. "But killing her makes us what they said we were. Tyrants, monsters, people who rule through fear. Fear works. So does mercy." Soraya stepped forward, faced Thessa. "You wanted me dead because I threatened your power, but power built on fear is fragile. It breaks the moment someone stops being afraid." Thessa's jaw clenched. "You think sparing me makes you noble?" "No." Soraya's smile was cold. "I think it makes me smart, because you're more useful alive." Understanding flickered in Thessa's eyes. "You're going to stand trial," Soraya continued. "Public, transparent, every crime documented, every alliance exposed, and then the people you've been controlling for years will decide what happens to you." Thessa's face went white, because that was worse than death. Public humiliation, accountability, the complete dismantling of everything she'd built. "You can't." "I can." Soraya's voice was steel. "And I will. Because this empire needs to see what happens when power is abused, when people put their ambition above everything else." Thessa's expression shattered, and Soraya felt no satisfaction, just exhaustion, the kind that came from fighting too hard for too long. Guards entered. Not Thessa's. Varian's. He gestured. "Take her. Separate cell. No contact." They dragged Thessa away. Her screams echoed through the palace. Then silence. Soraya and Varian stood alone in the ruined throne room. Blood everywhere, bodies being carried out, the smell of death and smoke thick in the air. "We won," Varian said quietly. "Did we?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw what she was seeing. Victory. But at what cost? The Empire was fractured. Trust shattered. Half the council compromised or dead. They'd survived. But the world they'd been fighting for was in pieces. "What do we do now?" Soraya asked. Varian was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "We rebuild, from the ground up. No more hidden alliances, no more backroom deals. We make this empire what it should have been from the beginning. Which is? Accountable." The word landed like a stone, because accountability was the opposite of everything the empire had been built on. It meant transparency, oversight, people having a voice in the decisions that affected their lives. It meant revolution, but not the violent kind. The kind that happened slowly, through policy, through changing hearts and minds. The hardest kind. "That'll take years," Soraya said. "Decades." Varion's expression was grim. "Maybe longer. But we don't have a choice. Not if we want this place to survive." Soraya looked around the throne room, at the blood, the destruction, the cost of maintaining power through fear. And she understood. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything that came after. Rule the old way, through dominance and violence, or try something new, something harder, something that required faith in people instead of control over them. The philosophy underneath that choice was staggering, because the old way was easy. Fear worked, control worked. You could maintain power through force indefinitely, as long as you were willing to be ruthless. But the new way required vulnerability, trusting that people would choose cooperation over chaos, that given real power, they wouldn't destroy everything. It was a gamble, and Soraya had spent her entire life learning that gambles were how you lost. But looking at Valerion, at the exhaustion in his eyes, at the weight he'd been carrying alone for 15 years, she realized something. Maybe losing wasn't the worst thing. Maybe the worst thing was winning in a way that destroyed everything you cared about. "Okay," she said quietly. "We try. We rebuild. We do it differently." Varion's expression softened. "You sure?" "No." Her smile was sad. "But I'm willing to find out." He pulled her close. And for the first time since the ritual, since the truth had come out, they held each other without pretense, without hiding, just two people who'd survived hell and were trying to figure out how to live in the aftermath. "I'm sorry," Varion whispered, "for bringing you into this, for—" "Don't." Soraya pulled back, met his eyes. "I chose this. Every step. Even when I didn't know what I was choosing, it was still my choice." "You didn't choose to be my sister." "No." Her voice cracked. "But I chose you anyway." The truth of that hung between them, because the bond was forbidden. The relationship impossible. But the connection was real, and they had to figure out how to honor that without destroying everything they'd fought for. "We need rules," Varion said quietly. "Boundaries. Ways to navigate this that don't compromise the Empire." "I know. It's going to hurt." "I know that too." He cupped her face, gentle, desperate. "I don't know how to do this, how to be close to you and keep my distance at the same time." "Neither do I." Soraya's eyes burned. "But we'll figure it out, like everything else." The promise in those words was fragile, but it was theirs. Each. 3 days later, the council reconvened. Half the seats were empty. The members who'd survived were shell-shocked, uncertain. Soraya stood before them, not as a defendant, as an equal. Varion sat at the head of the table, king, but not untouchable. "The Empire is broken," Soraya said. Her voice carried. "We all know it. The attack proved it. Lady Thessa's conspiracy proved it. This system doesn't work." Murmurs rippled through the council. Lord Cassian spoke. "What are you proposing?" "Reform." Soraya met his eyes. "Real reform. Starting with transparency. Every council decision documented, made public, subject to review." "That's unprecedented. So is surviving a coordinated assassination attempt funded by our own council members." Soraya's voice was sharp. "We either change or we die. Those are the options." Silence. Heavy. Then Cassian nodded. "I agree." One by one, other council members followed, not because they believed, but because they had no choice. The old system was dead, and something new had to take its place. Over the following weeks, policies were drafted, laws rewritten, the Empire's structure overhauled from the foundation up. It was messy, chaotic. People fought every change. But slowly, things shifted. Resources started reaching border territories. Corruption was exposed and punished. People who'd been voiceless for generations started speaking up, and the empire, for the first time in its history, started listening. Soraya worked herself to exhaustion. Councils, meetings, negotiations that lasted until dawn. But she didn't stop. Because this was what she'd wanted from the beginning. Not power for its own sake, but the ability to change things, to make the system work for people instead of against them. Varion worked beside her, not as a king issuing commands, as a partner. They fought, argued, disagreed on strategy and implementation, but they stayed aligned on the goal. And slowly, the empire began to heal. 6 months after the attack, Soraya stood on the palace balcony watching the sunset over the capital. The city looked different, cleaner, more organized. Construction everywhere as damaged buildings were repaired, signs of life returning. Footsteps approached. Varion joined her, handed her a cup of wine. They stood in silence watching the light fade. Kael sent a message, Varion said quietly. Soraya's stomach tightened. What did he want? To apologize. She looked at him. For what? Everything. Varion's expression was unreadable. The exile, the attack, letting Marala manipulate him. He says he understands now what he lost. Soraya's chest ached, because months ago that apology would have meant everything, would have been vindication, proof that she'd been right all along. But now it felt hollow, because she'd moved past needing his validation, had built something that didn't require his approval or anyone else's. What did you tell him? She asked. That it wasn't my apology to accept. Varion looked at her. It's yours. Soraya was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Tell him I forgive him. Varion's eyebrows raised. You do? No. Her smile was sad. But I'm tired of carrying the anger, and forgiveness isn't for him. It's for me. The philosophy underneath that statement was profound. Because forgiveness wasn't about excusing what someone did. It was about refusing to let their actions control your future. It was choosing peace over justice and freedom over revenge. Varion nodded slowly. I'll tell him. They stood in comfortable silence. Then Soraya asked the question that had been burning in her chest for months. Do you regret it? The bond. Everything that came after. Varion was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, Every day. The words hit like a blade. But, he continued, I also wouldn't change it. Because before you, I was surviving, going through the motions, ruling an empire but feeling nothing. His voice dropped. You made me feel again, and that's worth every consequence. Soraya's throat tightened. Even the forbidden part? Especially that. His eyes were fierce, because it forced us to be honest about what we wanted, what we were willing to sacrifice, what mattered. And what matters? Varian turned to face her fully. This, standing here, building something better, not because we have to, because we choose to. Soraya's vision blurred, because that was the truth they'd both been dancing around. The bond was forbidden, the relationship impossible, but the partnership was real. And maybe that was enough. I don't know how to be your sister, she whispered. I don't know how to be your brother. His hand found hers, the bond mark flared, but I know how to be your ally. Your partner, the person who stands beside you when everything's falling apart. Is that enough? It has to be. The honesty in that statement was brutal, because it acknowledged the limits, the boundaries they couldn't cross. But it also celebrated what they could have. Trust, respect, partnership. The kind of connection that didn't need romance to be profound. Soraya squeezed his hand. Okay. Okay? We make it work. Her voice was steady. We figure out how to be what we need to be for the empire and for each other. Even if it's messy. Even if it hurts. Varion's smile was sad. It's going to hurt. I know, she smiled back. But we're good at surviving pain. We are. They stood together as darkness fell. Two people bound by blood and choice and circumstance. Forbidden by law, but connected by something deeper. And maybe that was the point. Real power wasn't about what you could take or control. It was about what you built when everything was stacked against you. About choosing to fight for something better even when easier options existed. About believing that people, given the chance, would choose connection over chaos. It was a gamble, but it was one worth taking. 1 year after the attack, the Empire held its first open assembly. Citizens from every territory gathered in the capital. Thousands of them, all given voice, all allowed to speak. It was chaotic, messy. People argued, disagreed, shouted over each other. But it was also beautiful, because for the first time the Empire belonged to everyone, not just the powerful, not just the nobles, everyone. Soraya stood at the edge of the assembly hall watching it unfold. Beside her, Corinne shook her head. This is insane. Probably. It'll never work. Maybe, Soraya smiled. But it's worth trying. Corinne was silent for a moment. Then she said, You've changed. Have I? The woman who stumbled into this palace a year ago would have burned it all down for revenge. Corinne's expression was thoughtful. But you built something instead. Soraya looked out at the crowd, at the faces arguing and debating and fighting for their vision of the future. Revenge would have been easier, she said quietly. But it wouldn't have changed anything. Her voice was steady. Destruction is simple. Creation is hard. And I'm tired of taking the easy way. Corinne's smile was rare, genuine. Varion chose well. Did he? Yeah. Corinne's gaze was knowing. He chose someone who could survive him, and maybe even surpass him. Soraya's chest tightened, because that was the truth she'd been avoiding. She didn't need Varion anymore, not the way she had in the beginning. She'd built her own power, her own alliances, her own vision, and she could walk away any time. But she chose to stay, not out of obligation, out of partnership, because they were building something together that neither could build alone, and that was worth more than freedom. That night, Soraya found Varion in the war room. Maps covered the table, plans for infrastructure, trade routes, resource distribution. The work never ended. He looked up as she entered. Shouldn't you be sleeping? Shouldn't you? His smile was tired. Probably. She moved to the table, studied the maps. You're planning expansion, rebuilding. He pointed to a region. These territories have been neglected for decades. If we invest now, they could become self-sufficient in 5 years. That'll cost resources we don't have. We'll find them. His voice was certain. We have to. If we don't bring the outer territories into the fold, someone else will, and then all this falls apart. Soraya nodded slowly, because he was right. The empire they were building required constant effort, constant investment. One misstep, and it would collapse. Are we going to make it? She asked quietly. Varion looked at her, really looked at her. I don't know, he said honestly. This is new territory. No one's tried governing like this before. It could fail spectacularly. And if it does, then we fail together. His expression was fierce. And we get up and try again. Soraya's throat tightened, because that was the promise they'd made. Not success, not certainty, just the commitment to keep trying, no matter what. Varion, she said quietly. Thank you. For what? For saying yes. Her voice cracked. That night, under the archway, when I asked for a ride and you gave me a kingdom instead. His eyes softened. I didn't give you anything. You took it, built it, made it yours. We built it. Yeah. His smile was sad. We did. They stood in silence. Two people who'd started as strangers and become something deeper than family. Partners. Equals. The foundation on which a new empire was being built. And maybe that was the story all along. Not about love, not about destiny, but about two broken people choosing each other when the world said they shouldn't, and refusing to let go. Gothic. 5 years passed. The empire transformed. Not perfectly, not without setbacks, but measurably. Border territories thrived, corruption decreased. People had voices, choices. The open assemblies became annual events, chaotic, loud, but functional. And Soraya stood at the center of it all, not as a queen, as something else. A voice, an advocate, a bridge between the throne and the people. She'd earned respect, not through bloodline or marriage, through work, through showing up day after day and fighting for people who had no one else fighting for them. Varion ruled beside her, not over her. Their relationship remained complicated, forbidden, hidden in plain sight. But they'd found a rhythm. Days spent in councils and meetings, nights spent planning, strategizing, building. And in the quiet moments between, they were honest about the cost, the loneliness, the weight, but also about the victories, the small wins that added up to real change. It wasn't the life either of them had imagined, but it was theirs, and it was enough. On the 5th anniversary of the attack, Soraya stood in the throne room. It had been rebuilt, no longer a monument to power, but a place for people to gather, debate, decide. The thrones were gone, replaced by a council table, where everyone sat as equals. Varion found her there. "You ready? 4?" "The assembly. They're waiting." Soraya took a breath. "What's the topic today?" "Expansion. The Western territories want to join the Empire." Her eyebrows raised. "Voluntarily?" Apparently word spreading about what we're building here. His smile was tired. "They want in." Soraya's chest swelled, because that was proof, not that they'd succeeded, but that people believed they could. And belief was the foundation of everything. "Let's go," she said. They walked to the assembly hall together, side by side, partners. The crowd was massive, thousands of voices, all waiting to be heard. Soraya stepped forward and began to speak. Not about dominance, not about power, about possibility, about what they'd built and what they could still become, about choosing connection over control. And the crowd listened, because she wasn't speaking as a ruler. She was speaking as one of them, someone who'd been cast out, broken, left for dead, and had chosen to get up and build something better. The assembly lasted hours. Debates, arguments, compromises. Messy. Beautiful. Human. And when it ended, when the crowd dispersed, Soraya stood alone in the empty hall, exhausted, fulfilled, alive. Varion appeared beside her. "You did good. We did good." "Yeah." His hand found hers, the bond mark pulsed. "We did." They stood in silence. Then Soraya said the thing she'd been holding back for 5 years. "I forgive you." Varion's head turned. "For what?" "For not telling me the truth about who I might be, about the risks, about everything." Her voice was steady. "You made the best choice you could with the information you had, and I don't blame you for that anymore." His expression cracked. "Soraya, and I forgive myself," her voice strengthened, "for being desperate enough to accept, for choosing survival over caution, for every mistake I made along the way." Tears streaked down her face, but she was smiling, because forgiveness wasn't weakness, it was strength, the kind that came from accepting your scars and choosing to move forward anyway. Varion pulled her close, and they stood together in the empty hall, two people who'd survived everything the world threw at them, not because they were perfect, but because they refused to give up. On the Empire, on each other, on the possibility that things could be better. And in the end, that was the only power that mattered. Not the ability to destroy, but the courage to build, even when the foundation was broken, even when the blueprint was uncertain, even when everyone said it was impossible. They built anyway, and the empire they created wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, a monument to survival, partnership, and the stubborn refusal to accept that broken things couldn't be made whole. Years later, historians would study this moment, the transformation of an empire built on fear into one built on choice. They'd debate the methods, question the outcomes, argue about whether it succeeded or failed, but they'd all agree on one thing. It started with two people standing in the ruins of everything they knew and choosing to build something better. Not for glory, not for legacy, but because it was the only choice worth making. And in the end, that choice changed everything.